What's up, everybody? Welcome to Hollywood Unveiled, where we pull back the curtain on the Hollywood entertainment scene and get to know the people and stories behind the magic. I'm Jake.
And I'm Logan.
And Logan, I hear we got a fight club ahead of us. No, that was lame.
Dude, that's the first. Yeah, that was lame. But also the first rule is you don't talk about it. I was going to make some jokes to be like, oh, man, I wonder how far we can get into this without mentioning the name of the, because clearly, the first rule is you're not supposed to talk about it. And the second rule is you're not supposed to talk about it. But it's really hard to just do that naturally without setting it up ahead of time. Oh, yeah.
I was trying to do the mental math in my head about it would be a good idea to probably prepare for these episodes ahead of time. Well, but, why ruin the fun? We're on a roll, So.
Yeah, there's, it's spontaneity, and it's kind of interesting to see what we come up with in the moment.
We can't figure out our endings. Why should we figure out our intros?
We can't we can't figure out our endings, our beginnings, or our middles, but we get there. But yeah, I know you said it. So today we are looking at the 1997 surprise. I think it's the first modern movie I think of when I think of a cult classic. But Fight Club from David Fincher, based on the novel written by Chuck Palahniuk. I'm a big Palahniuk fan. Actually, Palahniuk wrote one of my favorite books, Rant, which I would love to see an adaptation of. But last I heard, James Franco owns the rights to it, so it's never. So I gotta wait a while to see a good adaptation of it. But I'd say in terms of the kind of thing, Fight Club is the tamest of Palahniuk's stuff. That's not saying it's tame, but
it was tame enough to make into a movie.
Exactly, and when you see the things in the movie, they kept a lot. Way more of the book than you would expect.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. There's only a handful of elements I can think of where it's all right, that's distinctly different. But other than that, for the most part, it's pretty much the same. And there's a few elements that Palahniuk even enjoys about the movie more than about the book.
I did see a quote that he did think that the film was an improvement upon the book and an expansion of sorts. So
so we'll get into that as we're talking about it. But let's start at the top. The book was written in 1996, and the movie came out in 1997.
Okay.
So it was a real quick turnaround between the book coming out, the rights getting bought up to it, and it going into development into this movie. Now Palahniuk says he came up with the idea for the novel after getting beat up on a camping trip. He went back to work the next day, and nobody in his office asked about the black eye, about the cuts on his face, nothing. And that kind of started the cogs turning for this idea of a Fight Club kind of thing.
I had heard that the conclusion he came to was that when they see you that messed up, they don't want to know. They don't want to know what you do in your personal life, so they will not ask.
Exactly. They will pretend to care about you as a person, but at the end of the day, they don't really care. And so it all kind of started from there. So with this being so quick to adapt, they had a big list of people they were trying to get for all the different positions. The only other director name I've seen floated out there for a possibility was Peter Jackson. Which, this is Jackson in 97. So
Frighteners Jackson.
Yeah, exactly. So he's coming off of stuff like Frighteners and Dead Alive and a lot of these things where it's okay, he can go a little more bombastic. I think he had just done Heavenly Creatures with Kate Winslet. So it's so he could do a little tamer, quote unquote kind of thing. So I could see the possibility, but scheduling just didn't work out. He wasn't able to do it. And Fincher was apparently really hesitant to jump onto the movie, not because of the subject matter, but because it was a Fox picture.
Interesting.
Because the last time he'd worked with Fox was Alien 3. So Alien 3 is his first movie. He really does not like the experience of working on that particular movie.
Oh, really? He didn't like putting the little dog in the suit and having him run around and set.
From how he describes it, and I can't say I blame him. The studio had a release date and a trailer out before he had shot a single thing. He was kind of just hired as a day player director, and every decision he made to kind of try to work the movie into a thing, the studio was just butting heads with him every step of the way. So he was really hesitant to jump into a big studio picture with Fox again. But He had a little more clout to his name at this point because he had made 7 at the very least. So it's like, all right, so he's got the big guns, to be able to kind of ask for more when it comes to, you're not going to mess with my cut. Now, a few of the other cast people that I have found. For the Edward Norton role, the 2 names that I saw kind of floated were Matt Damon and Sean Penn. 2 wildly different, especially at that point in their career, also wildly different ages. So that would have been a very interesting kind of thing. The only other name I've seen considered for Tyler was Russell Crowe, which is like interesting.
And I had heard he was the original choice, and that the studio said, we want a bigger name because this is Russell Crowe. This is pre-Gladiator.
Yeah, this is like Quick and the Dead era.
Did
Russell
he even
Crowe.
do Virtuosity at the time? Do you remember that one?
I think it was I love Virtuosity. Hell yeah, it's him and Denzel. What's not to love? Yeah, I think this was around the Virtuosity era for Crowe. So it's like, all right, like I understand why he would have been on the short list.
That Virtuosity, Russell Crowe could actually, I could see that very much a Tyler Durden. I can see that performance too.
There's a lot of aspects of his character in Virtuosity that I could. Isn't it like Sid? I think is his abbreviation.
Sid point something. Sid 6.0 or something
it's
like
Sid
that. Yeah.
Some number. So Marla had the most alternate castings that I have found. And I have a couple reasons why a few of them were next. So the first on the list was Janine Garofalo.
She came up again.
She came up again. She passed because the script made her uncomfortable.
No kidding.
Understandable. Reese Witherspoon.
Interesting point on Reese Witherspoon. It came down to her and Helena Bonham Carter, and the studio and Fincher were really fighting about it for a while. And the studio really wanted Reese Witherspoon until finally she just finally said, hey, I'm not going to do it. And so she took herself off the plate.
Hey, and that's the thing.
It was too dark for her, apparently.
And that's the thing. There are some actors where it's like, I always appreciate when an actor can look at it and go, the studio might really want me for this. This is not a good fit for me. And especially after a movie comes out, they can look back and go, yeah, I was not a good pick for like Nick Cage and Shrek. So they wanted Winona Ryder, which is like, all right, I could see.
I could see that. Yeah.
This one is wild, mostly for the reason of kind of why they didn't go with it. Courtney Love.
Yep.
But apparently she was dating Edward Norton at the time. So that would have made it a little complicated to potentially do all this stuff with. And another name that I saw floated that I always thought was fun was Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
That's an interesting choice.
Yes. And apparently as they were doing the interview, to kind of see if she wanted to work on the picture, she had absolutely no idea who David Fincher was. And he says, like, to this day, like that was kind of one of the more crushing of like, oh man, like I like Julie Louis-Dreyfus. Like she hadn't like nothing with 7, nothing like any of the things he had done up until that. She was like, yeah, like I have no idea who this. And he was like, oh man, like he's like, it kind of bummed him out a little bit. But yes, they went with Helena Bonham Carter, which like I think she's a good fit for that part. Now the paychecks on this were wild. Especially for a movie that is so kind of anti-consumerism, anti-capitalism kind of thing. So because he had been the lead of a couple things, Brad had he was just coming off of like Meet Joe Black, which was like a really expensive bomb, if I remember correct, like Legends of the Fall, Meet Joe Black, like he was doing a lot of that kind of stuff. But he was able to get about $17.5 million for his paycheck. Edward Norton made about $2.5 million. Wildly different. Also, considering when you watch the movie, Norton is clearly the lead character.
And for such a small, I mean, it was a small movie for the time, I believe, right? So, I mean,
in the grand scheme, yes. Like it was relatively, I think the marketing was a bit more expensive because they were like, you know what, it's Fincher, it's coming off of 7. Let's get something out of this thing. So in the movie, we're not going to run through the whole plot of it, but, as the movie kind of starts, this is a little detail I'm sure upon multiple viewings people catch, but honestly, sometimes people don't. Tyler actually appears 5 times in the movie before his introductory scene. So when they were kind of developing the movie, both Edward Norton and Fincher compared the movie to The Graduate, which because they think both movies are about trying to figure out the question of how to be happy, which is all right, like if you kind of boil the movie down, I could see that being
They're their own
know.
coming of age story. It's just what at what age too,
Exactly.
and what are you coming into?
Yes. They did a lot of different kind of method, like people went method in a lot of different ways for this movie just to kind of bring the whole thing together. So the first little one I want to talk about is Meatloaf. So Meatloaf, already a big dude.
His name was Robert Paulson.
You're damn right it was. So he is actually wearing a 90-pound fat harness.
Mm-hmm.
So it's adding an additional 90 pounds to him. There's actually a joke, and I don't remember where this joke is made. It might have been in the press. It might have been on the commentary for the movie. I don't remember. There is so like the rules of Fight Club, right? One of the rules is no shirts, no shoes. And yet, if you recall, whenever Bob fights, he's wearing his t-shirt. The joke that I think is made in the commentary is that Bob always had to keep the shirt on because the MPAA wouldn't allow otherwise. Because he had giant they're like, well, we got to keep the t-shirt on the entire movie because otherwise, the MPAA will have a fit.
They're just too supple and
God. Yeah, sure. Yeah. So this is something that I think is fascinating. Also, considering this was done unprompted, Brad Pitt intentionally had his front teeth chipped to look a little more beat up, a little less perfect, a little that.
Under dental supervision, of course.
Of course, yeah. He didn't just grab a pair of pliers and go, ha! But like the fact that he did that, like completely unprompted, just to kind of get in with the character, it's like that's kind of dope. Like I give Brad Pitt a lot of kind of kudos for that because he could have very easily just not.
And cut to Jim Carrey, who already had a chipped tooth, and had his veneer taken away for the film.
For Dumb and Dumber. There's a great quote from Edward Norton where he talks about like the fitness regimen that Brad took on because at some point early on they decided that like when Brad had his shirt off, we decided he should look like he was sculpted from granite.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah, and Norton has this great quote where he's like, yeah, Brad got progressively bigger throughout the movie. He bulked up and got huge and tan and beautiful while I became Gollum. and they did say that was at least a thematic thing of like, as Norton's character is kind of fading into the background, like he is getting fainter and fainter as Pitt is kind of becoming more and more prominent with what's going. So like,
and the more independently Brad Pitt's character is in the world without Edward Norton's character, the narrator, then you have to kind of presume that that's the time that Norton's character is unconscious of what he's doing. So he's never actually sleeping. So he's exhausted all the time, I'm sure. So.
Oh yeah. There's actually a little touch with that. When they first introduced Tyler, he's wearing blue blocker sunglasses. The tinting, which is supposed to help with easing the eyes, it's supposed to help with insomnia.
Yeah, there you go.
Kind of thing. So it's like they're already kind of hinting at it there early on. Now with Marla, there were a few little touches that Helena kind of brought to it that I think is interesting. The first was that because she didn't want Marla's makeup to look too pretty, too kempt, she asked her right-handed makeup artist to apply all the makeup with her left hand so that it looked a little sloppier. And it kind of adds this extra little kind of thing to the character.
Now, Logan, as a special effects makeup artist, if you used your opposite hand, your less dominant hand, would you achieve the same results?
Ugh. If it is in painting, I'll say sure. If it is in application, oh God, let me use my dominant hand. Please, dear God, let me use my dominant hand. So while they were filming, also apparently Carter got bronchitis. She thinks in part because of the sheer volume of shots of the cigarette smoking. Because Marla smokes like a chimney, and how many shots are there, especially early on, where it is almost a slow-mo shot of her there with just this cascading, billowing cloud coming out of her lips. So it's like, all right.
It's for the art.
Exactly. And she got better. So it's, it's not like it's a super bad thing.
Yeah.
So there's also a few little things that I think are fun. So there's the first scene outside of the back of, I believe, Lou's Tavern. The first fight between Norton and Pitt. So they had been doing the rehearsals. Norton had been punching Pitt in the shoulder. And right before they start rolling, Fincher calls Norton over and he's like, hey, hit Brad in the ear. But yeah, so they do that first take and then Norton winds back and clocks him. And then, that's why, Brad's like, motherfucker, you hit me in the ear. And if you kind of look at Norton, because the camera's kind of focusing on Pitt as he's kind of moving around, Norton's trying real hard not to laugh. Like you can kind of see it in his face. Like he's doing everything to not chuckle at least a little bit.
But that's in character too. So.
Exactly. And on the same note of hitting, so there's another moment way later in the movie where Norton and Pitt are walking past cars and they're like hitting them with the baseball bats. It's a little detail, but if you've seen the ending, it totally matches. The car alarms on the cars only go off when Norton hits them. Pitt might hit the car first, but the car alarm doesn't go off until Norton hits the car.
Nice.
Which is like, that's a really nice, subtle touch. Now, this is actually kind of fun. Did you know that DiCaprio technically has a cameo in this movie?
Oh, does he?
Yes, from a VFX standpoint, he does.
Oh, I do know.
Yes. In the slide sequences, when you see Norton kind of going into his cave, apparently the visual effects team used DiCaprio's cold frozen breath from Titanic for Edward Norton.
In that context, I'm not sure that the breath was recorded for Titanic or if it was a composited element they also used in Titanic. You'll see a lot of this stuff today, especially when you've got a shameless plug promotion for a friend and company of Action VFX, studio that creates stock elements that are just in everything these days. So you could spot their explosions, fog, fire, breath, similar thing. They had to do too. So it's not, it's really common for VFX studios to reuse elements like this. I reuse elements all the time.
Yeah. There's also a reference to one of Fincher's frequent collaborators in this movie, Andrew Kevin Walker. He does a lot of like rewrites and punch-ups for a lot of Fincher stuff. He knows Fincher's style. So even if it's like an uncredited pass, like he will do a lot of stuff on Fincher's movies. Well, there's 3 detectives that are introduced at one point near the end of the film. And it's Detective Andrew, Detective Kevin, and Detective Walker.
Yeah.
So I do think it's like, all right, like you're working your buddy's name in there. That's pretty fun.
Oh, wait, you know what this reminds me of? Game time for you, son of a bitch. And it's only one question.
Okay. I was like, oh.
Easter egg time. What other Brad Pitt movie has a Fight Club Easter egg? I'm sure there might even be more than one, but I have one in mind.
It is Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Screw you.
Yes, no, I remember that one. Yes, when Adam Brody is kidnapped, he is wearing a Fight Club T-shirt. There we go. In the scene with Brad Pitt. Yes,
well, that'll teach me.
I'm like, Jake, why are you IP thefting your co-host? Well, as we've been doing this, there's something I think I'm sure you've picked up on because I've been intentionally doing it. Every time I refer to Norton, I keep referring to him as Norton.
Yeah. He doesn't have a name.
He doesn't have a name.
Nope.
So I think in the end credits,
I believe the narrator, right?
He is credited as the narrator. Yeah. And I think if they do give him a name in those credits, I don't really remember, but it's Jack. Only because he has a lot of those lines of like, I am Jack's whatever. So it's like, all right. So the assumption was like, well, he keeps saying he's Jack's something. So we'll say his name's Jack. Which is like, all right, like that's a little silly, but all right. But also like pretty slick that you can go through the entire movie without.
And I think I never actually realized that, he doesn't have a name until very recently.
Yeah. So. It's one of those, it is subtle enough.
Like if you say, what's his name? And you're like,
you get so far into it. And then you're like, they must have said it somewhere. No.
Yeah.
Hey, Jake.
Yes, Logan.
Everyone knows there's multiple ways that you could be watching us right now or listening to us, as the case may be. You know what? If you're watching us on YouTube, like and subscribe down below. It really helps. And if you're just listening to us, if this is just just like a new podcast that you're checking out, rate and review. Those reviews really help. They really go a long way. And it kind of lets us know that we're doing a good thing here. And heck, if you like what you're hearing, you can always leave some of those comments. Tell us like if there's a project you want to see us talk about. If you're like, this movie changed cinema, tell us what it is. We might pick it up and do an episode about it.
Absolutely. And unlike Fight Club, please talk about it.
Yes, please talk about the podcast. Tell everybody. Even if it's annoying, be like, hi, how are you? I like a podcast. Do it. I don't care. Something. Just let people know that. Good time. Much to Fincher's joy, the studio did not push back on a lot when it came to this movie. Like, they trusted his vision. They kind of let him do what he wanted to do, with one big exception. There's one line of dialogue right after a very vigorous sex scene between Tyler and Marla. And in the original draft, they lay back to the bed, or she just looks at him lovingly and says, I want to have your abortion. Which apparently producer Laura Ziskin was like, no, that line's not going to fly. Like we get the tone you're going for. I can't let you use that line. And Fincher was like, all right, like he kind of worked it where he's like, all right, fine, I'll change it, but you have to use whatever I replace it with. She's like, done. Just that line can't stay. Like, I don't. Which is why it was replaced with, my God, I haven't been fucked like that since grade school. Mm-hmm. So they replace it with a worse line because they got the promise of, hey, as long as we replace that line,
Follow up to that. So Helena Bonham Carter, coming from the UK.
Yes.
Grade school does not mean what grade school means here.
No.
So when she does the line, and it's in the movie, and then someone tells her later, and she's devastated.
She's like, I said, what?
You sure did.
Now, this is kind of wild. In the days, or like in the week leading up to the film's release, one person took it upon themselves to completely spoil the movie on her daytime talk show. This is Rosie O'Donnell. Rosie sees the movie, does her show, and proceeds to spoil the entire ending because she really did not like the movie and wanted to talk as many people out of going to see it as possible. Mm-hmm. Kind of like with The Sixth Sense. It's like after someone tells you what the ending is, like you're less inclined to be like, oh, well, let me go see this movie and see what it's all about. At least in my regard, I still have not seen The Sixth Sense, despite knowing quite a bit about it.
Oh, wow. Well,
it's on my list.
I guess it worked on you. You don't want to see it.
I mean, I'm not opposed to seeing it, but I just haven't gotten to it yet. All right, so the film comes out and it's technically a flop. Technically, so its budget was about $63 million, and overall at the box office made about $100.9 million. Mm-hmm. But DVD is really where this movie finds its footing. Mm-hmm. When the DVD hits, it also gives them chances to use and play with the audience a little bit. So one of the things that you were talking about earlier, the FBI warning. Mm-hmm. So if you pause in that moment, it says, and I quote, "If you're reading this, then this warning is for you. Every word you read is of this useless fine print is another second off your life. Don't you have other things to do? Is your life so empty that you honestly can't think of a better way to spend these moments? Or are you so impressed with authority that you give respect and credence to all who claim it? Do you read everything you're supposed to read? Do you think everything you're supposed to think? Why buy what you're told to want? Get out of your apartment. Meet a member of the opposite sex. Stop the excessive shopping and masturbation. Quit your job. Start a fight. Prove you're alive. If you don't claim your humanity, you become a statistic. You have been warned, Tyler." Which is hysterical. It's great that it kind of goes along with it. When you boot up the Blu-ray, the DVD menu is Never Been Kissed. For
the DVD menu, the DVD menu of Never Been Kissed, not just the Because I feel like that would be something Deadpool would do now, though. Yeah.
See, the only time I remember a weird change thing like that on a DVD was on Me, Myself, and Irene. If you let the DVD menu play through, it would give you a reminder of, oh, hey, you haven't taken your meds. You should probably do that. And if you choose no, the screen switches from being a menu of the good side of Jim Carrey to the bad side of Jim Carrey.
That's neat. That's clever.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah. But apparently Fincher is actually the one who reached out to Drew Barrymore to get her permission to be like, hey, I kind of want to do this for the Fight Club, Blu-ray. We wanted to never been kissed. Are you okay with that? And she gave it the okay. She was like, yeah, that's hysterical. Like that's really funny.
That's
We
great.
should definitely do that. And now I think when people look back at the movie, like it's well accepted, right? Like everyone really enjoys the movie.
Yeah.
In particular, Palahniuk. So Palahniuk, like as we kind of touched on earlier, loves the movie. And says the one big aspect that Fincher managed to kind of hit that he couldn't quite figure out was the romance at the ending with Norton and Marla. It's a weirdly like optimistic kind of ending, whereas the book ends with Norton in a mental institution and the orderly kind of being like, don't worry, sir, things are still in motion and plans are being made for whenever you're released. So it's kind of like, all right, Project Mayhem is still going. It's still this kind of chaotic, like, shit. So like Palahniuk loves how Fincher was able to end the movie. And interestingly enough, Palahniuk kind of enjoyed the world of Fight Club and has actually come back to it a couple times. There are actually, I think, 2 different comic book sequels.
Oh.
One, Fight Club 2 and Fight Club 3. And I think the thing with Fight Club 2 is that, and I could be wrong on this, but it's like, it's years later. The narrator and Marla are married. They have kids, but like they're kind of in the boring suburban life. The narrator comes home one day and Marla's just gone. And I think that what I read is like, she leaves a note that she's like, ran off with Tyler.
Interesting.
Exactly. And the narrator's like, the fuck you say? Like, certainly seems interesting. I haven't had the chance to read it yet, but I want to because I thoroughly enjoy.
This feels like an episode we need to break down this comic and check that out.
I'm down to break it down. But you know what else I'm going to break down? Your will to live. Game time, you son of a bitch. Yeah, that's right. We're here. It's it. It's time for game time. You got 4 questions this time. 4. All right.
Now, are they actually 4 or is it like 4 parts, 3,
well,
3 part? What?
You know what? Okay. Here's what I will say. You got 3. Rude. You got 3 questions that have one definitive answer, and then you have one that is a little bit of a reach, but it's something I want to talk about, so I'll say it connects, and then that might be worth a couple points. But again, you try to IP theft me, I come back bigger and better. So, all right. Question number 1.
All right.
There is an item that appears in every single scene of this movie.
Starbucks coffee.
You are correct. A Starbucks coffee cup. See, there you go.
Hey, I got one.
See, you give me all this like, I'm not going to be able to get you. Get the first one out of the bed. You're fine.
Hey, it's okay. And it was so prevalent, it even crossed over into Game of Thrones.
I saw someone where like
that was a nod to Fight Club.
Sure. I saw some article where they were like, Game of Thrones, take notes. This is how you integrate a coffee cup and it doesn't suck. And it's like, Game of Thrones shouldn't be integrating a coffee cup. I get your point. Okay. All right. Question number 2.
It should at least be a chalice.
Yes. You can etch a mermaid on the side of a chalice and I'll give you the comedy points.
Yeah.
All right. So question number 2. There is a term for a person that is introduced in this movie that Palahniuk sarcastically takes credit for. What is that word?
It's not bits, is it?
No, it is not.
Okay. I reluctantly said that too. I was like,
that's great though. I'm calling someone a snowflake.
Oh,
yes. So there is the line in this movie where I think it's Tyler says like, you are not a beautiful and unique snowflake. Right. And it's part of his whole manifesto. But of course that has kind of been co-opted by, but like Palahniuk has like been on record sarcastically being like, yeah, I came up with that. I'll take credit for it. Like, all right. Question number 3.
Okay.
Completely missing the point of the movie. There was a promotional tie-in video game for Fight Club. This game included a special unlockable character when you finished with story mode. Who is that unlockable character?
On one hand, I'm like, is it somebody who's in the movie? I mean, no. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is like, if they're in the movie, why would you have to unlock them?
Yes, I will stress for the point. This is a game that missed the point of the movie. This is a game that saw it and went, oh, it's a fighting game.
Mike Tyson?
That would be really funny, but also make a lot more sense than the actual answer, which is Fred Durst. Yeah. Because when I watch a movie all about nihilism and how capitalism is just the worst, you know who I think of? Limp Bizkit.
Fred
No.
Durst.
I kid you not. He is an unlockable character at the end of this game.
He's not even like a fight icon.
No.
Why? Like even making Fight Club video game about fighting is kind of missing the mark too.
Exactly.
So
like you've already missed the point with making a fighting game of Fight Club.
Like having like a UFC fighter would still miss the mark, but also make sense.
Like if they were like, oh, we got Randy Couture in there, it's fine, great.
Yeah, you missed the mark, but it makes sense. He's a fighter.
Hell, they could be like, look, we put in Stone Cold Steve Austin. I'd be like, you're close. Like,
I guess
that's more on the mark than Fred Durst. Yeah, it's really weird.
What per se after unlocking Fred Durst do you get to do with Fred Durst?
You get to fight with Fred Durst, and of course he has his stereotypical red backwards baseball cap.
Okay,
that's it. That's like I've never played the game. I didn't have the original
rule
PlayStation.
Is no shirt, no shoes. I mean, no hat. Too, so
no, he gets to wear the hat because otherwise you don't know it's Fred Durst. Yeah, so it's like he gets to wear a hat. All right, so you're 1 for 3.
Okay.
Not doing great, but you're going into the final question.
What else is new?
Well, here's where you might be able to save it. So I will say that this question can be worth 3 points.
You love to overcomplicate these things, don't you?
No, but like this turns it into an interactive thing instead of
Let's do it. Let's do it.
All right, so this doesn't really tie into Fight Club because this thing I'm about to talk about takes place a couple years later, but it does tie in.
No, I'm kidding.
Because it does tie into the fact that after this movie, Brad Pitt really kind of had this resurgence of being like the goofy, weird, chaotic character actor.
Okay,
right? Like you get him in stuff like Ocean's 11, where all he does is kind of show up, eat chips, and be sassy.
Yeah.
Right. Like you have him in like The Mexican, where it's like his whole point is like he seems like a standard romantic lead, but he is the biggest doof and can't function as a human being. So his like weird character actor bit is kind of coming out after getting to do something like Tyler Durden. So on that note, here is your the first part of your final question. Leaning into that bad boy Tyler Durden aspect, he did a guest spot on what MTV show in 2002?
Was it Celebrity Deathmatch?
It was not Celebrity Deathmatch. Good good late 90s, early 2000s MTV poll. Because that's a really great show, and I unapologetically love Celebrity Deathmatch.
But I knowing it well enough, I should know all celebrity voices are impersonated, so I can't unless he impersonated someone else.
Unless we're talking about the Celebrity Deathmatch video game, which is a whole other. Anyway, no, unfortunately, I'm sorry. That is not correct. The correct answer is Jackass.
Because of course.
Yeah. So these are the other bonus points you can get here. He shot 2 skits is what we'll kind of call them. He shot 2 skits with them, but none actually made it to air.
Wait. So if I don't know the first one, how am I supposed to know what the other ones are? And if I didn't know he was on Jackass, how would I know that he was in the sketches that never aired?
I said that they were available points. I didn't say it was a plausible available. Just because an actress is single doesn't mean you have a chance with her. But and these were on because I have it in my collection. These were on one of the DVDs for the whole series run of Jackass.
Then I don't know. Did they blow him up in a porta potty or something? What
he was not blown up in a porta potty. Is that just one guess, or is that
I have no guesses on this one, Logan.
All right, so the 2 bits
I don't know.
Yeah, so the 2 bits that Brad did with the Jackass guys. The first is something called Night Monkeys. which is literally just they put on gorilla costumes and then just go cause chaos. Now you might be wondering, well, wait, but they put on gorilla costumes. Doesn't that mean you can't see that it's Brad Pitt? Yes, that is exactly the problem. So, and that's literally the whole bit. They do this entire thing. Yes, you do this entire sketch of them doing crazy stuff in gorilla costumes. And then at the end, one of them falls over and his head falls off. And you reveal, oh yeah, that's been Brad Pitt the whole time. It's like
take any celebrity that really wants a Star Wars cameo and wants to be a stormtrooper.
It's one of those where it's like in concept, okay, that's great, but like you could have shot anything and just used that bit of them at the end. With the head
the only cameo that beats that is his cameo in Deadpool.
Yes. The other sketch that he did with them is honestly ridiculously funny, and I think is further leaning into the chaos Tyler Durden kind of thing. It's called The Abduction. This bit is very simple. Brad Pitt shows up at a Pink's Hot Dogs, and then the Jackass guys pull up in a van wearing ski masks
and just kidnap him in front of people.
And just see what happens.
That's my kind of comedy. I like it.
Like first off, it's wild because they had to preemptively call the police and go, hey, by the way, you're going to get at least one 911 call tonight about someone kidnapping Brad Pitt. Here's Brad Pitt to tell you that he hasn't been kidnapped.
Well, Logan, as much as I love these questions, and they're good ones, I would say to call them Fight Club trivia, sir, I think you're going a little far on this one.
On that last one, I will grant you, but the other three, I think were very in line. On the whole, though, this is one of those movies that I think is interesting, not just because of a lot of these subtexts and a lot of the really obvious stuff, but I do think it is a really funny movie based on how many people take the wrong messages from it.
Oh, yeah.
Or misinterpret, or like, the amount of people who look at it and go, that's what I need to be, not realizing that the whole movie is just a takedown of that toxic masculinity. Written by, like, I'm 90% sure that Palinek's like very openly gay. Like, so it's written by a gay man. Like it is pointing against toxic masculinity. And you have these dude bros who were just like, I need to be like Tyler Durden. It's like,
it's a cautionary tale. And you also seeing a lot, like, look, if you watch Dune 2 and you think Timothée Chalamet's the hero in that, you're missing the point of it.
Yes. And that's kind of the thing. And I think what makes Fight Club work is that you have that satire so heavy that some people don't even realize it's satire. Kind of like Starship Troopers.
Yeah. If you go in there thinking, the Marines are great. It's like, hold on now.
I was like, you might not actually realize. No, this is one of those movies. Like, this is the movie that kind of introduced me to Edward Norton as an actor. It introduced me to like Brad Pitt. This was the first like Fincher movie that I saw, that I was like, oh, like this dude.
And, this was earlier on for me where I wasn't necessarily keeping track of, the movie stats and things that I'm now. So it's one of those where I didn't even know who Fincher was when I saw it. And it's one of those, who somebody is later in life and you're like, oh, they did that. Oh, that makes sense now. Okay, got that. So
it definitely changed kind of the attitude of films. Because I think up until that point, a lot of movies that were kind of coming out of the 80s and kind of going into the 90s, it felt like they were trying to be very optimistic. Like they were a lot of like, man, things were rough, but we're back on the right track now and everything's going to be okay. That's what a lot of those movies in the 90s kind of are.
It's kind of a bleak ending too. Yeah,
it is. And that's what I think is kind of fascinating, is that it's one of those like, you can tell yourself that everything's fine, but it's not. And we need to kind of address like these, and I think movies after it comes out kind of try to keep, at the very least, that kind of edge to them. At least in the immediate aftermath.
And I think what that did to the movie going audiences too, is I think it put everybody on high alert when they go to movies now, because they're like, okay, what's the twist? What's the twist? Is it all in the person's head? Oh, did this movie none of it ever really happened? So it makes you really question literally in this case, the narrator is it's a unreliable narrator. So.
Yes, I think between this and stuff like The Sixth Sense, both hitting right here at the tail end of the 90s, those two big movies with these huge, twists, like I think, really kind of hit audiences where it's like, this is a thriller and I can't quite follow. Is it because there's a big twist coming? Like, and I, you could definitely see the uptick in twist endings coming in standard thrillers in that kind of thing after this movie.
Well, Logan, with all of that, you know what? I'm not even going to talk about it because that's the rule. We don't talk about it, right?
This is true. We don't talk about it.
I would say tell us where the people can find you, but no, because we don't talk about it.
We don't talk about it.
Tell the people where
we can tell about us. Tell about no, I'm findable. I'm on Twitter at FilmGuy19 or FilmGuy89. I'm on Instagram at FilmGuy1989. Threads at FilmGuy1989. YouTube, we do a lot of the at-home table reads.
Tell me you have a Fight Club.
I was about to say, I don't think we've done Fight Club, although I did write a narrative of Rant, the Palahniuk book that I like, and we did do a reading of that as a feature script.
Oh, I'll include that in the link down there since it's related at the very least.
And how about you? Where can they find you?
You can find me and my company at VFX2Go on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads. I'm still going to post the Threads eventually. And our website, vfx2go.com. And Logan, did you know you can find us on our website, HollywoodUnveiled.com, and find us on the socials at Hollywood Unveiled Podcast?
Yes.
All right, then. With that, I've been Jake.
I've been Logan.
And we'll figure out how to end the show one of these days. But until then,
at some point,
we just won't talk about it.
Sure. And don't fight.
I'm not the one to mess it up today.
Hey, I don't mind doing that every once in a while.